Okay.
Hey everyone, it's Brenda again with another episode of Three Uniques. I'm really excited to introduce you to Eric Termuende. How are you, Eric?
Doing well, Brenda. Huge fan of all the work that you do and excited to be a part of the conversation today.
Oh, I'm such a huge fan of the work that you do too. So this is awesome. We get to shine on each other. That's amazing. So just so everyone knows a little bit more about Eric, and he's going to share more about himself too. He's the co-founder at NoW at Work. So I have questions about that. I want to know about that a bit more. He's an international speaker, and he's also the best-selling author of Rethink Work. So Eric, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Look, I'm an eternal optimist. I don't think that makes me unique. I think there are a lot of us optimists out there that really believe that work could be something that we get to do and not necessarily something that we have to do. So I've spent the better part of the last decade in my entire professional career working with organizations to create tomorrow's greatest places to work, and ultimately to make what I'm calling now these little 1-degree shifts that allow us to build a more intentional future for us, for our families, and for our places of work. I've had the pleasure of being on stages all over the world, which has been fantastic, all over the world until about March 13th. Since then, I've had the pleasure of doing virtual events with companies like Zoom and BMO and Dell and Intuit and all sorts of great organizations that are looking to create a more intentional future for themselves and better places to work. So I'm excited to have this conversation and hopefully bring a unique perspective to the Three Uniques.
Amazing. So NoW at Work is your organization. So through the speaking that you're doing and then connecting with those various organizations that you mentioned, is that where your work plays out, or is it mostly on stage? Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, look, I co-founded NoW at Work with Rocky Ozaki. I know you're a friend of Rocky's as well, and we do a lot of resilience training, cultural optimization with the clients that we work with. A lot of that does stem from the stage. I've been on about 350 stages now, all over the place, averaged about 100 flights a year for the past 3 or 4 years, which I guess was a silver lining when COVID hit. I haven't had a routine in 7 years or so. I haven't been in one place for more than 3 weeks. So speaking has been the primary driver of income, and where, I sort of hang my hat in a hotel room over the last little while. But at the same time, it's been more than I could have ever dreamed of, and continues to be absolutely fulfilling and exactly what I want to do.
Amazing. So you're here tonight to share with us your Three Uniques. So how about it?
I am. My Three Uniques, sure. Do you want me to give you all 3 of them?
Yeah.
Right, back to back to back?
Go into
all
it.
right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I've heard a lot of episodes and I've admired all of your guests. And I thought that if we're looking at the 3 things that make us unique, I'd probably give my unique spin of them. And instead of giving you 3 words that make me unique, I thought I would tell you 3 things that I'm not, or 3 things that I don't believe in, that are maybe a little counterintuitive to the ways and the things that we've been brought up learning and thinking. Number 1 is I'm not really a believer in habit for the sake of improvement. So I'm a practitioner of practice, I guess you would say, if we wanted to spin that to be my unique. I believe that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And to me, that's sort of synonymous with this idea of habit, doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting to get better. Science shows that we need between a 15 and a 20% fail rate to remain optimistic and to continue to improve and to learn. I mean, if we're basketball players and we're sitting at the foul line and we've got the exact same form and we're trying to shoot that free throw over and over and over again, we're not going to get all that much better unless we learn that perhaps our elbow needs to be tweaked in just a little bit. Perhaps our legs need to be spread apart just a little bit further. We need to hold the follow through instead of having our wrist not broken. But that comes through practice, not just through habit. I think a lot of us who are looking to improve ourselves will show up to the gym, maybe 5 days a week, and that's great. But unless we're testing ourselves and pushing ourselves a little bit further, I don't believe that we'll necessarily get all that much better at what we're trying to accomplish. So instead of a habit, I would believe that, what did I say? I'm a practitioner of practice.
Yeah.
So I would say that's sort of my number 1 unique. Number 2, as I would say that I don't believe in best. A lot of us were grown up to believe that the American dream or the Canadian dream is what we should be striving for. We should have a white picket fence, a house, a wife, a husband, a son, a daughter, a cat, a dog, maybe a goldfish. This was perhaps designed in a time where women weren't allowed to marry women, where men weren't allowed to marry men. Certain folks would sit at the back of the bus because of their skin color. And what we've learned over the years and continue to learn, I recognize we've got a long way to go in many different aspects, is that what's best for somebody might not be best for somebody else. We talk about this when it comes to workplace culture all the time. The best place to work in America right now is the Hilton hotel chain. Second best place to work is Ultimate Software, a tech company, of course. And I would suggest that somebody that works at Ultimate Software wouldn't necessarily want to work at Hilton, and somebody that works at Hilton wouldn't necessarily want to work at Ultimate Software. And that doesn't make either of them a bad place to be. It just means they've done a good job at attracting the best people for their environments. And I think that goes for us too. When it comes to who we're marrying or who we're not, where we're living, what floor we live on, even if it's an apartment or a condo, how many kids we have or how many kids we don't have. This idea of best, it might work in sports. I think in many ways it doesn't work in life. And so I'm a believer of best for us, not necessarily a universal best. The third thing I would say that sort of makes me unique is the biggest breakthrough that I had on a personal level is realizing that I'm not comparing or competing, myself to anyone else or competing against anyone else. I've seen a lot of speakers in my space, anyone from Tony Robbins to Mel Robbins to Brene Brown to Gary Vaynerchuk to all of these incredible people, Simon Sinek, Peter Shahan, Seth Madison, Josh Linkner, the list goes on. There are thousands and thousands of phenomenal speakers. But what I realized is that the articles that frustrate me most are the ones that say, here are the 6 things that Elon Musk does before he has breakfast, as if we're supposed to emulate that if we want to be like Elon. And the truth is, while Elon might be a wildly successful individual, I don't want Elon's life. I don't want that pressure. I don't want that responsibility. I don't want that timetable. I don't want to sleep as little as he does. I don't want that lack of free time with my friends and family that I do now. And so comparing myself to someone that I don't want to be, despite appreciating and respecting everything that he's accomplished, absolutely, allows me to blaze my own trail a little bit more confidently. Now, we could say the same for Oprah. We could say the same for Ellen. Oh man, do I admire these people? Absolutely. Do I want to be them, or should I compare myself to them? Absolutely not. And so if I can identify, what it is that ultimately makes me happy, in the language that I like to use on stage, if I can continually reduce friction over and over and over again by being introspective and analyzing what's ultimately best for me, then I believe that perhaps the only thing I'm competing against or comparing myself to is the person that I was yesterday. And I think that if we take this philosophy and continually reduce friction, then we don't have to compare or compete against something that we don't understand. It's funny, actually, I saw an Instagram post from our mutual friend, Matt Coker, this morning, and I couldn't tell you where it came from. I like to give credit where credit's due, but it's a message that I've heard before too, but it refreshed my memory today. It said, if you've got a problem with me, go ahead and give me a call and tell me about it. But if you don't have my number, you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, someone had, it was Batman,
Christian Bale,
that's it. Yeah,
there it is.
He posted it, and I love that because people have had problems with him, and it's like if you don't know him well enough, then
you don't know his problems. You don't know what he's been through. I don't know your problems, what you've been through. You don't know my problems, what I've been through. We all have things that we've overcome. We've all had tough days and we've had great days. But to suggest that I should be comparing or competing against somebody that I don't understand because a magazine article said so, or because they've built an incredible company that, again, we can absolutely admire and learn from, I think sets us up for a bit of failure. So this idea of habit, best, and comparison and competition are sort of what helps me sort of blaze my own trail, identify and ultimately achieve the happiness that I'm looking for, and develop this practice of practice, really, which I think makes me a little bit unique and sets me apart in my own way.
Love it. Okay, so I have like 1,000,001 questions. We're going to take it from the top. I want to hear a little bit more about practice. So when you talked about not developing habits, but really being sort of mindful about a practice, and I love the sports analogy where it's like move the elbow a little bit, adjust. Okay. So what sort of things do you do in your practice to practice better? So you must have some type of mindfulness techniques, some type of reflection tools. Like what are some things that you do to practice better?
I think the first thing, like we need to do in a series of different instances, is listen first and act second. You know, I think one of the best examples, and I hate to go back to fitness again, is this idea of going to the gym. Okay, I've got a habit of going to the gym 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 6:30 a.m. because that's the habit that I want to build in order to become more fit. You know, as luck would have it, Vancouver was filled with smoke a few weeks ago. And, you know, my habit of choice, if I were to look at that, or my practice of choice would be to go running outside, you know, so about 6 or 6:30 every morning, I like to go running. Now, smoke comes in and I run for a couple of days and I realize that I'm not feeling that good because of the smoke. Now, I might go inside and hit a treadmill. I might look at a different time of the day when the smoke's maybe lifted a little bit. I might do a body workout. I might do a different cardio exercise on a spin bike or something like that. See, the way that I've sort of grown up understanding and learning about habits is that if I'm not doing something that actually fulfills the habit, I've broken the habit, I've failed, I haven't been able to fulfill the promise that I made to myself by going 5 days a week. And I'm sitting there thinking like, oh no, I didn't do it. But the practice allows me to still get my fitness in at some point in the day in one way, shape, or form that ultimately I'm required to do because I can't control the surroundings around me. Sure, right. It might be smoky and I have to deal with that. I can't just keep powering through. I tried that. It didn't work. It worked miserably. And I think the same thing happens when we're at work, when we're communicating with others. I think we have to listen. We have to understand where that alternative route might be. But that's where the learning really comes in. That's when the growth and development really happens, because a habit suggests, at least, again, we might have, you know, in terms of semantics, a different way of defining that. But habit to me seems sort of like we're just powering through, trudging through and doing the same thing over and over again. Practice requires reflection. And another one of our mutual friends, I'm sure Mike Desjardins, said to me, he said, lessons are learned in reflection of events that have happened, not as they're happening. And what that allows me to do is to take note and reflect on something that has happened, learn from it, and perhaps find a better way that I didn't even know existed to attack what that problem might be more effectively and become better at it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Our brain is just moving too fast in the moment, and it's trying to cycle through past events to make sense of whatever's happening to us right now in that moment. So it's far better for you to carve out time in your practice to actually reflect and, you know, and slow down your thinking and pull out the nuggets, pull out the gems to say, hey, you know what, I could take a different course next time. I tried it this way, it was successful. I tried it that way, it wasn't as successful. Whichever way, take door number 1, take door number 2, and then proceed from there. Versus in the moment, it's sometimes too hard to make those adjustments. Your brain is moving way too fast. I was just listening to, I don't know if you've heard of him, Scott Sonenshine. He's written a new book. Well, his book is called Switch, and he's just written a new book with Marie Kondo.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so they got together about joy at work. So it's very similar sort of thinking as you, but he talks about our brain can't switch off to do multitasking. It's not programmed that way. And if we do switch off, it actually sacrifices the next work that we want to take on. So this like short term, like we say iterative, but unless we're making a permanent stop, you know, take a break, go for a walk, you know, shift our thinking now into this new body of work, we're still kind of like hanging on, like that old body of work is still hanging on, and we can't focus on the new body. So he just talks about it from a neuroscience standpoint. There's lots of stats out there now just saying multitasking just does not work. So, I
mean, yeah, I think we could agree that when you try and do 2 things at once, you don't do either of them all that well.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And then the concept of best. So you're saying that you don't want to go after being the best. So what makes you unique in that way? You're just like, you're giving yourself a chance to be different or be yourself, like be authentic that way. Is that it? I want to make sure.
Best to me implies that there's sort of a finish line, that you're done, that you're there.
Yeah.
I think we can agree that in your industry, in your profession, and in mine, there's no finish line. We're never done. There's always, you know, infinite room to learn, to grow, and to develop. You know, as we age, as we discover the world around us, you know, our interests change. Where we identify might be a fit for us might change. We might have been a best at something that we did in the past comparatively, but then really, are we done? There's no finish line in life, at least the way that I see it. And this sort of ties in closely to this idea of finding sort of passion in the work that we do. I think instead of sort of finding passion, what I'm sort of looking for is finding the problem that I want to solve and finding passion in that problem. And if we continue to solve these big problems, the growth, the learning, the discovery that we incur because of it allows us to keep going. And I don't mean keep going in sort of like, one foot after the other. I just mean keep learning and keep expanding our knowledge of ourselves and the world around us. And to me, there's no finish line to that. Again, I think it works in sport. You can have the best team in sport this year, and that's fine, but they're not necessarily the best next year. It's always moving. It's always changing. We're always growing and adapting to the environment around us, which then suggests that this idea of following, looking at my third unique, that comparison and competition there's a lot of wasted time looking at that when we're comparing apples to oranges.
Awesome. There's something I want to share in there, like even just using Bill Gates as an example. I was listening to him on a podcast with Dax Shepard. I love Dax Shepard's podcast.
Yeah, he's great.
And he had Bill Gates on, and that was like one of his like top people that he wanted to get on.
Of course.
And it just like blew him away. He was totally gaga on the whole call, on the whole podcast. But I think one of the things that was, yeah, I would be too. We'll do both of them. But I was really impressed actually with Bill Gates, as you should be. But just, the fact that he's, incredibly smart man, built this amazing organization, Microsoft, in case you haven't heard of it. Oh yeah. But now he's a philanthropist, and, he's trying to solve, the vaccine for like malaria, and he's trying to eradicate other diseases around the world. And, he's learning about, he was learning about Ebola in East Africa, and like he was in there and he's relearning, and he doesn't know some things. Right. And he's sure, he's got the money to put towards it, but he's actually digging in deep to like really understand how it all works and how all these government organizations work. And, we're still very siloed as far as how we approach healthcare, when really it's a universal issue, and we're learning about it this year with COVID. And it was just a really fascinating podcast, but it's along that same lines where like he could say, I was the best at running this organization. He even realized if I couldn't take Microsoft to the next level, I had to bring in a CEO that could. I had run its course, and now I was going to take on the next thing.
Can I add one more thing to that? Because I love that example, and I have a personal example too, not to go back to sport again, but it made me think of the basketball example. I was at a conference back in 2016 with the late Kobe Bryant. He was on the stage after I was, and it was an incredible performance that he gave on the stage. But the line that caught me off guard the most, he said that if basketball is the greatest thing I do with my life, I'll have considered my life a failure. What? He then became a venture capitalist. He wrote children's books. He was founded a new energy drink, and had his hands in all sorts of things to make the world a better place. Basketball gave him the stage that he needed to make the impact that he wanted to make. He was not done. If you ask him, he was just getting started. And the race that he was starting had no finish until he was done completely. And that isn't because he made it to the top. It's because he had no more air left to breathe.
Yeah. And then that just sort of sends goosebumps up my arm, just in the sense of like, really too bad that he wasn't able to carry on with that. Like,
okay.
Yeah. That's too bad. Okay. And then comparison. Yeah. I mean, for me, I text out frequently or post frequently about comparison. Comparison is the death of joy, right? It kills
Absolutely.
joy in all of us, right? So, and I think this year was definitely a leveling playing field for a lot of people. I mean, you talked about your own personal experiences this year, having to sort of level set or right set some of your work. I've had to do the same. I know a lot of people, and I would probably say, I could reflect back on this year and go, yeah, it was a tough year. And by no means was it tough compared to some people I know.
Of course.
And I'm just really thankful for what I have. So when you get into those moments, and actually sort of, it takes me to a question that I have for you, when you've maybe been in a sense of like, I guess, despair around something didn't go as well as you wanted to, maybe you even failed at it. Right. So, how do you get yourself out of that? Or like, can you think back to a time where it's like, this is an area of my life where I wasn't as successful in, and I had to really think about how do I get myself out of it? What did you do in that situation?
I think
in general?
Well, there's two things that I would probably do in a situation like that. If there's someone in particular, let's just say, got a stage that I didn't get, I would ask myself, if I really understood a day in the life of that individual? And the answer, of course, is always no. But the flip side of that is looking more internally, because I think that's really where the work needs to be done. And asking, number one, what am I grateful for? Number two, what other opportunities do I have? And number three, what are the 1-degree shifts, or what are the small changes that I can make to get that spot next time?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an interesting time in the world right now. And unless I'm continuing to learn, continuing to improve, continuing to take risks, continuing to practice, continuing to fail forward, I'm not going to be getting where I need to be in order to get to some of these stages and some of these opportunities. At the same time, I'm infinitely grateful for so many things in my life, including my partner, including my health, including the status of my job right now. And really understanding and being grateful for what we do have, despite perhaps an opportunity lost or something along those lines, really starts to get me grounded again in what is here, and what I have to be thankful for.
Awesome. Amazing. When was the last time you did something for the first time?
I think on a larger scale, a couple of months ago, I did my first virtual keynote, 3,200 supply chain leaders. You know, I was supposed to be in Orlando, in the Orlando Convention Center, was supposed to have literally 3,500 leaders of supply chain America in front of me. And it was the first big gig where I was asked to do it virtually in my studio. And the studio I've now got with my media partner, Hatsu Media Group, down in Railtown in Vancouver. Love the work that they do. You know, I would say they held my hand through the whole thing. It was more like I held their hand and watched as they start to build this masterpiece of a space. It took us hours and hours to get it right. We failed over and over again. Truthfully, the gig wasn't as good as I would have liked to deliver. I've done probably 14 or 15 of them since, with great organizations, but it's a learning process. And, you know, the fear and the sweat that was dribbling down my face through this thing was probably very visible for the viewer. And it was the first step that I needed to take in order to build a new business for myself, in order to create a new reality, one that I can proudly say that I'm thriving in now.
Awesome. How did you feel, like, even just like when it was done? I mean, knowing that, okay, sweat, maybe it wasn't necessarily like the most shining moment for you, but just like looking back on it now, like you said, like you've done like 14, 18 different since then. How are you feeling now about that first time and like doing it?
A few things come to mind. Number one is embarrassed. And I say that because I find myself thinking that a lot about previous gigs, but I think that courage and that vulnerability to continue to try new things, to continue to push the envelope, to continue to take risks is ultimately what's required to be great at the craft. So embarrassed comes to mind. You know, I like to think that if I'm not embarrassed about a talk that I gave, 8 or 12 months ago, I'm probably not growing fast enough. And I say that loosely. It's not like it's, I have to be worried about looking at last year's gig or anything like that. But it's an improvement process that's constant. The other is that I was grateful to be able to pivot to the virtual platform. I was grateful to be able to connect with those people and have incredible people reach out and connect after, and have new gigs be booked from it, because the spin-off from it was great and people were quite happy. I was grateful to have the partners that were there to help me along the way and to go through this experience with me, to have the clients and the agents that are working day in, day out to make this a successful career for me. A lot of us think that speaking is a one-person job. It's absolutely not. It requires a very large team and logistics that are far beyond my capabilities to manage. And I think it was sort of a necessary step to next. And I don't think a lot of us give ourselves credit for that first step that we take. Every marathon is run one step at a time. Every piece of cake that we eat is eaten one bite at a time. It's not just that we take a bite and it's done. It's not a Lay's chip, if you remember the slogan a few years ago. I bet you can't eat just one.
Yeah.
It's a process. It's all part of the process, and it's one that I'm grateful to be able to go through on hopefully a fairly regular basis.
Awesome. So we've got less than 100 days left on 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. So considering that a lot of people's strategies or goals this year maybe got a little bit hijacked due to COVID or economic stuff. What's something that you really want to get accomplished between now and December 31st?
Well, I mean, on a less serious note, I want to break 80 on the golf course. That would be phenomenal. We brought it down from like the mid to high 80s, and that's been great. But I want to continue to be more grounded in this space. You know, there's a comfortability about being on the screen and connecting with the audience and phrasing things just right so that it doesn't look like it's scripted or manufactured or anything but that it's authentic and genuine. Mm-hmm. And that is, it's an art really more than anything else, because there are so many contributing factors to composure, to passion, to authenticity, and to being genuine. You know, while a lot of my keynote has structure and a framework and everything else, the message comes through that framework, requires total confidence in the message that I want to get across, requires alignment and a clean segue in every piece of material. And, you know, truthfully, this might not be the answer that you're looking for, but I take great pride and passion in the work that I do. And for better or worse, I'm very satisfied by the approval of those around me. One of the things that I've struggled with my entire life is being proud of myself for the work that I'm doing. And so to hear and to be validated by other people, again, is not something that I'm proud of, but it's part of the reason why I got in the business. I mean, you've got the attention of hundreds or thousands of people at a time. And at the end, they clap and they approve or validate the work that you did, or they don't. Mm-hmm. And I think those stakes have really required me to focus and to be better. So in the next 100 days, I want to continue to work on my craft. I would like to run one more marathon, just like we did last year in December. I'd like to break 80. I'd like to take my partner on a staycation. That's so just the two of us, because we did it. We made it through the year. And who knows, maybe we'll be able to work with your organization too.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Eric, I'm going to let you get on with your evening. Thanks so much for being on 3 Uniques tonight. I really appreciate connecting with you.
Thanks, Brenda. Always a big fan, and grateful for the opportunity tonight.
And for everyone else that's tuning in, continue to listen to Eric's video. It's going to be posted fully on YouTube and on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And my message out to everybody when I wrap up is always the same, which is there's 7.5 billion people on this planet. They need what you've got. So keep sharing your 3 Uniques with the world. Thanks again, Eric. Good night.
Bye. Thank you.